When we're talking about shamatha and vipassana, shamatha really is, at this point, learning to calm the mind. So we're learning how to focus to calm the mind, whereas vipassana is about focusing on insights that arise. So there is this wonderful process that the Buddha spoke about through the anapanasati.
Well, welcome everybody. Super excited today. Welcome to HeartMind Happy Hour. I am Holly Copeland. I'm a scientist and human potential coach and owner of HeartMind Alchemy. And my passion is uniting ancient wisdom with modern science to help people find a clear, calm mind and a joyful, compassionate heart. And I am super excited today to once again have Stephen Altair joining us. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Holly, and love and blessings. And we're off to a great start in many ways, because we are now here and live, having tried a few times. And that's part of the analogy to meditation, is that we often find we dive into meditation quite a few times. We have lots of struggles and difficulties in our practice before it all goes smoothly. So we're at that part. We're at the part where we're starting to dive deep into the practice after having gone through a few struggles to begin with.
Right. Yeah, it's a great analogy. So you are, let people know who you are. You are a writer and a teacher and a mystic and a healer. You've done so many things. And I know you as a teacher from Raising Our Vibration that I participated in last year. And it just really, the meditations I learned and working with you and Kevin Shaninger were...
Kevin will love that.
Yeah, he will love that.
Special shout out to Kevin Shaninger. Yep. We've got, so Kevin, thank you for everything infinitely.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Kevin's name has been said many different ways on a lot of different shows, so he's used to it. He's nameless, you know.
Right. So today we're talking about the wonderful topic of letting go and going deep in meditation, and specifically the Anapanasati. I cannot talk today. Anapanasati Sutra.
Anapanasati Sutra. That's it. You got it.
Thank you.
Got it. It's that sort of day, you know. It's that kind of day where everything at the beginning seems all jumbled up, and then suddenly it starts to part, and there's this beautiful clarity that comes in. That also is very perfect to talk about meditation, because that's kind of how when we're talking about shamatha and vipassana, shamatha really is, at this point, learning to calm the mind. So we're learning how to focus to calm the mind, whereas vipassana is about focusing on insights that arise. So there is this wonderful process that the Buddha spoke about through the Anapanasati Sutra that involves 16 steps. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're also going to talk about this simple process of shamatha and learning to pause and stop so that we can calm the breath. Because the majority of the time in our lives is spent doing everything but pausing or stopping and calming the breath. And once we've gone through that process, so the first 12 steps of Anapanasati Sutra are all about getting into and going through that process of deep absorption. And the final 4 steps are what happens as you leave that process, the kind of insight that you develop through that process. So it really is quite a beautiful example of a deep and profound practice that everybody can do. And I think that's kind of one of the marvels that the Buddha left us, that this is a practice that can be adopted by the entire world, no matter what your religious background, no matter what your belief. The attitude of really deep mindfulness on the breath, and the practice of mindfulness generally, which, as we know, is caught on in a lot of Western circles, is something quite universal. And I'm, you know, over the years that I've taught, and I've taught in Christian circles, and I've taught in Hindu circles, and I've taught in Buddhist circles. And the way that we can all share is through these really deep, powerful general principles of stopping, calming, and developing insight. I mean, these are really basic universal principles. Mm-hmm. So it's the same with the kind of struggles we've had this morning with technology. You keep being asked to pause, even though you're in the middle of struggle and you're trying to meet a deadline. You keep having to pause. You have to exercise immense patience. And one of the things I'm going to constantly reinforce as we start to talk through the process and as I guide you through it is this simple practice of being patient. So as the consciousness arises in different ways, and as the consciousness reveals itself in signs or nimitta, there's often a really deep desire to grasp that. The whole practice itself can be just a grasping if we're not skilled. So skillful practice and having the patience to, even in the midst of difficulty, to allow whatever arises to arise is really very, very powerful. So in the beginning of Anapanasati Sutra, the instructions are actually prior to the 16 steps to work on your environment and your seat and mindfulness. They are actually prior to the Anapanasati Sutra to develop an understanding of what the Buddha went through before he came to the insight that he did, which was inspired by a childhood experience of jhana that he'd had when he was very young. So I think the power in the practice is realizing that there are lots of ways that we need to set up our practice prior. So the preparation, and in the practices that Kevin Shaninger and I talk about, we talk a great deal about preparation before you even start meditation. And the Buddha did too. So I think that is for all those who might be listening who are advanced practitioners, you will know exactly what I'm speaking about. And for those of you that are just beginning, you will start to become aware how really important simple things are. For example, being in an environment which has very little sound to disturb you. If you're sitting in a room which is next to a factory where somebody's using a jackhammer, you're going to really be disturbed. And there are those wonderful stories about the teacher who answers a question from a student when the student asks, oh, such and such is disturbing me. And the teacher says, well, actually, you're the one that is going out to disturb it. It's your consciousness that's reaching out to that sound. And your consciousness is agitated. It's not the agitation that is creating that problem. It's not the external thing that's happening. It's everything is a reflection of our consciousness. Everything that we experience in meditation is our consciousness arising and its mind being reflected back to us. So these are really profound and very powerful practices that the Buddha revealed in this beautiful exposition that we call the Anapanasati Sutra, that has been adopted originally from its early translations in the Pali Canon, has been adopted by millions upon millions of practitioners around the world, and of course taught in slightly different ways. So the way that I'm going to share with you comes from my own teachers, who are Jack Cornfield, and that line from Jack Cornfield, Thich Nhat Hanh, and also another practitioner who is a very great teacher of mine, Ajahn Brahm, and Ajahn Chah from the Thai forest monks traditions. They're all really deep, strong traditions of Anapanasati Sutra, done in a very traditional way. So I'm going to share with you kind of a very careful process, taking you through step by step. And it is a guided one. So I'm going to, once we get people joining us, I'm going to take you through a guided process in which people will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. But it is very important for the mind to be calm, so that in the end you can look at or observe what the mind is doing and develop insight, and actually come away from the practice with something different than how you entered into it. And even if that is insight around struggle, or insight around the true nature of your mind as it is in the present, then that is a really great and profound realization. You suddenly stop projecting outwards. You stop trying to attach fault or judgment or blame to everything else that's happening in your world at the moment. And you look at how the mind is reflecting back to you. And that realization, when you realize that everything that comes up, every thought, every emotion, all your relationship, because it is about relationship to external things, sounds, feelings, sights, smells, taste. It's your relationship to them. It is your consciousness relating. It's nobody else's consciousness. And how you perceive that then helps guide you either into subtler ways of dealing with that until you can learn to let go, or starting to realize that we are really spiritual beings and we're having this human experience, and we drop into a non-local consciousness, which is also called non-dual compassionate awareness. So we fall off the cliff. We go through this remarkable process of actually letting go of ourself. Now, if you're a beginner and somebody says to you, I'm going to guide you into a process where you're going to let go of yourself, at the point of letting go, there is a variety of things that can come up, and they're generally only two things. A letting go that brings up excitement because you're so excited about what's going to happen, or a letting go that brings up fear because you really don't know. The unknown is frightening, and the possibility of yourself vanishing or being extinguished is a really dire prospect for the self itself. It doesn't want to let go. It wants to hold on at all costs. And that grasping is often an experience that comes up. That is a very normal experience in meditation. So as we start to talk through that, we'll all go through a really profound change together. Now, I'm realizing it's right on the time that people might want to join us. So I'm going to
let some people in. And I would love to talk about the connection with this practice in particular, with its relationship to the jhanas and cultivating bliss, was something that, is sort of near and dear to my heart, and just really appreciate that aspect of the practice. So I'd love for you to talk about that too.
I'll definitely do that. So we certainly welcome everybody that's coming to join us, whether you're joining us live or whether you're going to join us afterwards. We're really very grateful that you're coming to join us in this practice of letting go. So
hello.
How do you?
Hi, how are you?
Very, very good.
Good. How are you?
Fine. Here, confined in my house. Like everybody.
It's a very good subject for this talk, Ebby, because you are in fact on a self-imposed retreat.
Yes, that's true. The thing is that I'm getting accustomed to, I have a lot of time to meditate, and when this goes, it's over, it will be so hard to go back to what it used to be our normal life. It will be very difficult.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
Holly,
We
you are
actually,
my hero.
we have a remarkable, Holly is all of our heroes.
Because she has so much time to hear all the podcasts available in the internet. She hears all the podcasts. How she does that? I don't have that much time. You didn't hear, Holly. Did you hear what I said? Oh. She's busy.
And hello, Naresh, too.
Froze for me.
Yeah. Hello, Naresh. It's a very special welcome.
Thank
Love
you.
and blessings.
Thank you, Holly. Hello.
Hello, welcome, Naresh.
Hi, Holly. Good evening.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Daughter also wants to say hello.
Hello.
Hello. So lovely to meet your family.
Thank you.
This does feel like a family affair in many ways. It's a
Yes,
very beautiful way together.
It does. I'm going to go on our Heart Mind Alchemy page, our group, and just tell people to join.
Okay.
Let's
So
see.
And Naresh, where are you at the moment?
I'm in Princeton, New Jersey.
New Jersey. And so you're also on a lockdown like Abby?
Yes, almost from the last 3 weeks.
Yes.
Hi, Abby. How are you?
And I'm in Japan. So we've been in a similar situation. This is our 6th week here. So it hasn't been as compulsory as in the United States. It's called voluntary lockdown, primarily because in the beginning they locked all schools down, and so the schools have been out for quite a long time. So that's understandable. And as I said to Abby, it is very much like a retreat situation. We have a lot of time to spend with families, which is a very beautiful thing. And we have a lot of time to spend in meditation if we can arrange that with our partners. My wife and I try to take turns with the children and balance that out. And I think it really does afford us all a remarkable opportunity to look at family life and also at meditative life and at the beautiful things that we can bring to each other when we're living in close, living circumstances. Because for some people, they maybe have never been 3 weeks together.
Yes.
It's I'm reading all sorts of statistics from around the world about that. It's really quite funny, both in the good, the positive aspects of it, and also some of the more challenging aspects. So I understand that can affect couples in different ways. You can either love being together, or you can really find it some of the biggest challenges on earth if there's only a certain amount of things you can do and you're together with each other for a long extended period like this. So it's very useful.
Stephen, did you post this to your page in case we want to see if anybody else wants to come? Maybe they.
Yes.
Okay.
I did.
Great.
Yep.
Excellent.
So So in the next, perhaps in the next 5 minutes, Holly was just asking me about jhana and bliss. And one of the, I'm going to start right back at the beginning when we actually go through the guided section, which is in about 4 or 5 minutes. But Holly, do you want to be more specific about something that you would like to know about that? For example, do you want to know about actually about bliss states, or about how to access the bliss states, or what specifically would you like to know?
Well, I think I was just more generally at first, I could talk about all of this for a very long time, but in a broad sense, you know, this was described by the Buddha as a full path to enlightenment. Yes, am I correct in that? Yeah. And what I've read, and I've now read 4 different books on this topic. I mean, the states that people access are incredibly profound, this path. And the jhana states that are described, you know, there's no question that it's like, you know, it's sort of in the mind-blowing category. Yeah.
Correct.
And you know, am certainly enticed, and I know there's this, you know, there's a fine line between desire and grasping in Buddhist path, and that, you know, that's a balance, and yet at the same time we need to be, you know, inspired by something. The idea that this, you know, can lead you into these incredible altered states of consciousness is, you know, what keeps me, you know, like, yeah, this is an incredible path. So I just thought, you know, describing a little bit of that for people, I think they would be interested to hear.
So from my experience of the jhana state, you enter the jhana through liberating your mind. So one of the biggest, most profound aspects of jhana or jhana is that they are actually stages of freedom, one after the other. So the mind becomes free. And when that happens, you're actually free from the body, from the 5 senses. When that really happens, it happens with such deep stability that it feels immutable, unchangeable, and it can go on for hours and hours. In one retreat I was on, I entered a state that lasted for 3 days. And so, and it was unchangeable. It was just you don't have words to say, and you can't speak. You're just literally present, and you're present in a variety of ways. A good test of a jhana state is that it lasts a particularly long time, because when you're totally free like that, there is no self. The self vanishes. I described it as the self being extinguished like a light. And in fact, it was initiated by an enormous flash of light in my brain. And I then entered into a state of total equanimity and tranquility and a powerful bliss, but it's like a bliss of peace. It's so difficult to describe. It was an unchangeable state for those 3 days. So if you're entering into states that last, you know, a few minutes or half an hour, that's not a jhana. That is a leading up stage to that state. Because when you're inside the jhana, you have no choice. There is all will drops out. The self, of course, has vanished. Therefore, there is no will. You are just present. And you are totally unshakable like a rock. You're not aware of anything outside yourself, because there's really no you. It's very difficult to describe, because you can only emerge from that jhana when the mind is ready to come out. So it's not up to you. You don't make a choice to exit. In that kind of state, for such a state to persist, you can be assured it is a very, very satisfying state of consciousness. It is a bliss beyond anything that you've ever felt before. It makes every other sensory experience on this planet dim and pale in comparison. And that's why a lot of the teachers describe people saying, I want to be a monk, I just want to sit there, I want to be a nun, I want to go on retreat forever. So there is that aspect to, you know, I've always said to people, it is so far beyond your imagination that you actually cannot conceive of it, because when it actually happens, there is nothing else. You are in a total, immutable, unshakable state. And therefore, it is actually very handy to be on retreat, because then there is no limit. If you were to sit there beyond the time of the retreat, well, nobody's going to bother you. I was on a 12-day retreat at the time, so to be in a state of that nature for 3 days was really of no consequence to anybody. So anyway, there we go. Hello, and we've got Sime.
Sime? Are you there? Oh, she's connecting to audio. Sime, are you there?
Stephen.
Hello? All right, well, I'm going to assume that she can hear. Oh, she said, hey. Okay.
Hello, Sime.
Hello, Sime.
So blessed to have you with us. Thank you so much. So, Holly, perhaps we can begin, and then you can, if there's anybody else
Stephen,
that
do you
wants
hear
to
me?
join us. Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you, Abby.
The thing that you were talking about, it may be possible that somebody thinks that he is in a jhana, but after your description, you don't have a doubt.
Correct. You don't have a doubt. You know for sure. And you know because there is no volition, there's no will. You are literally carried by that vital force. You are carried by that bliss or tranquility or equanimity. You're carried by that inner state. So yeah, you have no doubt. It's, you know
After
the
your
difference.
description, I'm sure that I not have even come close to the jhana state.
So it's, and again, your consciousness will show you, and you'll also know, Ebby, when you get close, because you'll start to recognize these signs that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes that come up. And today we're going to experience them rather than talk about them. So in a few minutes, so Ollie is going to lead us into this and talk to us a little bit about this, because we're kind of renewing it with all the people, the three of you that have gathered. And then for those of you that listen later, you'll be able to follow the guidance through. So for about the next probably 30 to 40 minutes, so Holly will start it, and then I'll guide you into it. And at the end of it, you'll have the opportunity to ask any questions, if you can.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, Holly,
All right.
back to you.
Well, thank you very much. I actually don't, Stephen, have very much to say. I'm a participant in this. I guess what I would say is that I have been practicing, the anapanasati breathing. I mean, I've read all about it. I've been practicing it myself. I actually did do this practice about a year ago when I was working with Cody Raw. And through the Mind Illuminated book, and read that. And then more recently, about 2 weeks ago, when I started reading some of these other jhana books, I took it up as a practice, and I've been doing about 2 hours to 3 hours a day. So pretty, I've been giving this a lot of focus in my personal practice, and I know I haven't reached jhana, but have definitely continued to increase in more deep meditative absorption. And it's been, I feel like I'm making progress. I'm getting further and further along. And it's a powerful practice. And I'm really appreciative for the conversations that we've been able to have about it, because there are, it's very subtle. There's a lot of subtlety as you go in deeper and deeper. And the mind is it's a wily coyote, isn't it?
It surely is. I think if you start from that premise, from that foundation, that Your mind is definitely a trickster and likes to play games and loves to post all kinds of possibilities and experiences and ideas and thoughts, and that is something you're going to engage with as you move deeper and deeper. So yeah, you're quite right. So if you're happy to begin, we
Please.
can begin. And if you're listening to this later and you want to record with your Muse headset or Wavi headset or any other headset you've got, then this would be the time to connect that and put that on. And if you want to find a way that you can be comfortable, so a seat that's at an appropriate height, I'm going to guide you through the practice of Anapanasati Sutra. And so just make sure you're comfortable. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit first, just as a preliminary. And I'll talk slowly and carefully and leave spaces in my words and in my guidance so that it's very easy for you. And as I said, you know, I've had a number of wonderful teachers over the years, from Jack Cornfield, Thich Nhat Hanh, Ajahn Brahm, through the Sogyal Rinpoche and the Tibetan Buddhist teachings, and of course the Dalai Lama, who's been my main teacher now for around 30 years. And into all those practices, Paramahansa Yogananda and many of the other great teachers that I've had over my lifetime have really kept guiding me to go deeper and deeper and deeper into these simple practices of shamatha, or calming the mind, and vipassana, or developing insight into the mind. So that's what we're going to do together. So I'd ask you just to place your feet flat on the floor, and your palms are cupped in your lap. Your spine is nice and straight, imagining that a cord is pulling from the top of your head up to the ceiling, and you close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, you're just very simply aware that we're talking today about how to let go, about deepening our practice, about exploring what lies beyond, about letting go of this interfering self into emptiness, into non-locality. One of my very early introductions came through the teachings of Padmasambhava when I was very young. And in a beautiful dialogue with Princess Yeshi Sogyal, who herself was an illuminated practitioner, a yogini and a master, he told her that the way of great perfection in meditation is to hold your body unmoving as you maintain a gaze. So the crucial first point is to have a still body, and then to keep your inner voice silent without uttering a thing. So to keep that inner narrative self quiet. And then to keep your mind at rest with no plans, no past, no future. And do not control your breathing. Let it be natural. And when you expose the united expanse and pure awareness, meditate on that. That was one of my earliest practices, was simply allowing the breath to be natural and allowing the great perfection to reveal itself. Now, when we do that, we begin to see within ourselves the potential of somebody as a Buddha, an awakened one. So let's close our eyes if you haven't done that already, if you're just joining us. as we go on this journey. And let's imagine that you're going about your normal life. You're in a relationship. You're married with a child. You're doing your job. And then one day, you decide to give it all up and become a wandering monk. And there you are, wandering from one teacher to another. When you remember a childhood experience of a jhana, a meditative absorption, a mental absorption, and you realize that the jhana is a way to awakening. So you go to a stretch of forest on the banks of a great river, and you sit on a cushion of grass under a shady fig tree, and you meditate. You watch the in-breath, just as you're doing now, and the out-breath. That's all you do, sitting very still. Let's try that together. Simply watching the in-breath and watching the out-breath. No particular focus other than watching the breath. Breathing in and breathing out. This method of meditation that you're using is called anapanasati, which is mindfulness of the inward breath and the outward breath. Through this practice, you are going to enter jhana and emerge and gain the insights of enlightenment. You too are awakening. This is what happened to the Buddha. The Buddha taught anapanasati for his entire life. It's the method that gave him enlightenment. And it's the same method that he gave his disciples, whether they were in monasteries or the city. This method is imparted in the Anapanasati Sutra. For myself personally, I studied this many years ago. And it remains a foundation of everything I do. This breathing in and breathing out. Entering stillness and letting go. Anapanasati consists of 16 steps. The first 12 are our instructions for entering jhana, and the final 4 are our instructions for what to do when we emerge. The bliss and beauty of jhana is deeply profound. If you pass through these beginning stages too quickly, you'll find that you haven't prepared properly. Like a musician who hasn't practiced the piece or doesn't know the repertoire that the orchestra is about to play. If you enter into an orchestra too quickly, you're going to sound out of tune. You'd be wise to do the groundwork. You'd be wise to build up foundations that are deep and powerful and strong. And then, when you join the orchestra, the ecstasy of everything working in harmony, you'll do it with a practice that is stable. The Buddha said, first of all, our environment is so very deeply important. Go to a quiet place where you won't be disturbed by sounds or people, by mosquitoes or clatter, by interruptions. You might think it would be daring to go in the middle of snake-infested paths in the jungle. But this can often build an endurance, but not a depth, and not an ease. The Buddha often spoke of beautiful places like Bodh Gaya or Sanath, where I've been, and where he assisted people to touch enlightenment. So you want to make sure that your environment is conducive to meditation, like a sacred place. Be aware right now as you're breathing of this environment within you and all around you. Be aware of the silence and the peace, and the spaciousness. Be aware of the stillness within and all around you. Secondly, the Buddha spoke of the comfortable seat. You want to make sure that your seat is always comfortable, because if you enter into jhana, you will be sitting there a long time. You may want to sit in a way that is conducive to simple, straight, deep, and powerful meditation. Not too comfortable, but just comfort enough to give you success in breathing, and at a level where your body can be quiet and still for long periods of time. And then he spoke about mindfulness before beginning the 16 steps. He spoke about mindfulness as a practice, deep mindfulness of present moment awareness and silent present moment awareness. When you set up mindfulness in front of you, you give it priority. You give it a prior place. We let go of the past and the future. And then we refine our practice with silent, present moment awareness. When you let go of the past, you're free in the present. And when you let go of all plans and expectations, you let go of the future too. For a moment, be here now. Notice what is present. And now, proceed to the beautiful silence of the mind. Now you can see even deeper into the nature of your mind. A useful technique is to notice the space between my words, and then the space between your thoughts. For just a few moments now, attend closely with sharp mindfulness to your thoughts. And when one thought begins and another thought ends, there, that pause, that gap, that is silent awareness. As you begin to recognize and realize this silence in your practice, it lasts longer. Give your deep attention now to the silence between your thoughts, noticing when a thought ends and when another one begins. See if you can notice the gap, the pause in your thoughts. The mind is wonderful, unexpected. As you enter into deeper states, you often end up in conversations with your mind, thinking things like, oh, here I go again. Here I go into this kind of meditation. But if we're very, very deeply patient, something else, even stranger, can happen. We can reach a very deep, peaceful, meditative state. I've had bad meditations and good meditations over the years, and there is really no such thing as a bad meditation. During very difficult meditations, we build up powerful foundations for strengthening and persevering, for meditations of peace. So these preliminary stages of mindfulness, present moment awareness, and silence of present moment awareness, we may want to spend a long, long period of time, not just months, but perhaps even years, developing this, crafting mindfulness. Because if we can reach this point, we reach a deep and powerful point in our skillful means of meditation. We can be deeply present with our practice. We can be deeply here and now and experience joy and peace and wisdom as we progress deeper and deeper. We carry that intention, we carry that preliminary practice with us at all times. We carry that subtle inner Buddhist smile with us, moment after moment, not just in our practice, but in our everyday waking moment. So right now you are silently aware of what is happening right now in front of you in your mind. You've established this level of mindfulness that is needed for you to progress along the 16 steps of anapanasati. So these 16 steps, the first one is the long breath. In the long breath, breathing in a long breath, I know I am breathing that long breath, and breathing out the long breath, I know I am breathing out the long breath. We are experiencing a long breath. Take a moment now to experience breathing in a long breath, a long, long breath, and breathing out a long, long breath, and know that you are experiencing that long breath. You don't need to control your breathing. You only simply need to observe the breath long enough to know that it is long or deep and smooth. And now take your awareness and attention to the short breath. Breathing in a short breath. I know I'm breathing in a short breath, and breathing out a short breath. Make your breath short. Be aware of the short breath as you breathe a short breath. This is allowing you to become aware of the variations of the mindfulness of breathing. So now make the breath short. The third step is the whole process of breathing. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body, and breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. This third step is experiencing the entire process of breathing. This is where mindfulness increases in its subtlety and ability to observe every sensation involved in the process of breathing. You're aware of the in-breath from the very moment that you start to breathe in, when it arises out of the stillness. And you see the sensation of breathing in evolve in every moment, reaching its peak and then fading away till it is completely subsided. You see with such clarity that you even see the space, the pause between the in-breath and the next out-breath. Be so very aware of the subtleties of the breath. Watch for the very first beginnings of the out-breath, and to watch for the very first beginnings of the in-breath. Then observe the pause, the space between the out-breath and the next in-breath. And repeat this process again and again, experiencing the whole breath from the point you start to breathe in all the way along the breath to the point you pause and start to breathe out, and then all the way along the breath until you pause and are aware of the space, and then you breathe in. Breathing in, I'm aware. And breathing out, I'm aware of this whole movement, the whole breath. The fourth step, the whole breath is one. calming the whole body. Breathing in, I'm calming the whole body. And breathing out, I am calming the whole body. When you're comfortably, truly in oneness with the breath, it calms down automatically. It calms down so deeply. There's so little remaining that can disturb any progress, because you're naturally experiencing the softness, the smoothness, and the depth, and the profound nature of the breath itself. What was at first rough now is becoming smooth, like the finest silk. Attention is becoming refined. You're subtly, gently persisting in letting go. This whole sequence is a process of letting go. Deep, subtle, smooth, subtle. You don't know if it's an in-breath or an out-breath. You only know the one moment of the breath. You only know the one moment of the breath. There is no beginning and no end. There's no middle. There is just, as you calm down, just this simple oneness, this one moment of breath. The next step is joy. Breathing in, I feel joyful. And breathing out, I feel joyful. Subtly smile, an inner smile. As this mindfulness, this power of mindfulness builds, and you're watching the breath calm down, joy naturally arises like a golden light at the first break of dawn. It happens gradually, but it happens because now all your energy is flowing deeply into the knower and not the doer. You're very simply not doing anything anymore, only witnessing, only watching the breath. There is a deep tranquility within the breath itself. There is a deep joy. Breathing in, I feel joyful. Breathing out, I feel joyful. The breath appears tranquil and beautiful and joyful. And it deepens into the sixth step of happiness. Breathing in, I feel happy, calm happiness. Breathing out, I feel happy, calm happiness. There is no longer any doer. There's just a being, a knower. The happiness arises too like a first dawn light, like the sun rising above the horizon. It happens gradually through your mindfulness power. As your mindfulness power and energy flows into knowing, witnessing, observing, the less you do, the more tranquil the breath becomes. So subtle, so smooth. The mindfulness is filled with power. And the energy is flowing through this knower, creating this mindfulness and happiness and joy. This power of mindfulness is being experienced as happiness and joy. And the breath is as beautiful as the brightest sunset. The breath is so much wonder that you scarcely wonder whether you would ever look at anything else. The breath is so tranquil, so beautiful, so deeply profound. Breathing in, I feel calm, happiness, and joy. Breathing out, I feel calm, happiness, and joy. Step 7. The breath vanishes. Breathing in, I'm aware of the mental formations. Breathing out, I'm aware of these mental formations. The breath vanishes as the breath becomes so beautiful, and the joy and happiness so quiet in their strength and power, that the breath seems to completely disappear. You no longer notice the breath. It doesn't happen by will, but simply when there is enough calmness and happiness and peace. Simply, the breath has vanished. There are two things that can begin to happen at this point. One, we can get very excited and think, wow, I'm there, I'm here. And the will comes back into it. And the jhana will be unlikely to happen. If this happens, simply let go. If you're aware of the self or the doer entering back in, simply let go and return to that subtle, beautiful breath. Leave all that behind. Another obstacle that can happen is fear. Fear can arise because you need to leave something behind to enter a jhana, and that is yourself, the doer. The doer is silent before you enter the jhana, but still there. But inside the jhana, the doer has completely gone. Only the knower, the witness, is present. In the jhana, one is fully aware, but all control has gone. You cannot even form a single solitary thought, let alone make any choices or exercise your will. The will is frozen, and that can be scary. That can awaken fear. If you've never had the experience of being stripped of all control and so fully awake, then the fear of surrendering can come up. This fear of surrendering is one of the most basic parts of the self or the doer. And it's that we are letting go of. So to overcome this fear, we need to develop deep faith, the 8th step, confidence in the bliss, confidence in the teachings. Breathing in, I calm my mental formations. Breathing out, I calm my mental formations. You actually develop the deepest confidence. You know that you're being guided and that you're perfectly safe. And through the confidence in the Buddha's teachings, you can let go of this too, and that too. You can let go of the excitement. You can let go of the fear. You can simply be confident and be drawn ahead. The bliss of the jhana is simply to be followed and developed and practiced often and then often again. So offer your full confidence to that bliss. Offer your full faith in the teachings, in the Dhamma. Let the jhana warmly embrace you in an effortless, bodiless, egoless bliss. Let go of all control for a while. Just simply experience this. Remain in the stillness. Simply sit and watch beside the still pool in the forest as the creatures arise. These creatures only arise when you are absolutely still. These beautiful creatures, like jhanas, only approach when you are absolutely still. In the beginnings, ordinary ones come out, and then stranger ones. And then beautiful, and finally the strangest and most wonderful. These are nameless experiences, beyond anything you could even imagine to exist. They're so strange, so blissful, and so absolutely pure. These are the jhanas. Step 9. Breathing in, I'm aware of my mind. Breathing out, I'm aware of my mind. What you see in front of you at this point is a nimitta, or a sign of exactly where your mind is at this point. It may arise as a light, or a sound, or a feeling. Could be a bright light, could be a feeling of deep bliss. Whatever arises in your mind, simply be aware of it. The still and silent mind is visited by these nimitta as signs or reflections of the mind. It is such an important realization to know that what you see is a reflection of your mind. Experiencing the mind is achieved when we let go of the body, we let go of the thought, and we let go of the 5 senses. We've even let go of the breath itself, the awareness of the breath, so completely that all that remains is this beautiful sign of the mind, the nimitta, this pure mental object, this pure sign. And when it first appears, it can be extremely strange. For many meditators, it's mental, like a light, but it is not a light, because your eyes are closed and your sight consciousness has been turned off a long time ago. It can also be experienced as an intense tranquility or ecstasy. It's experienced in many different ways, because this is the best description that our perception can offer. At this point, observe the mind and realize that what you see at this point is your mind reflected back to you. Step 10 is to shine the nimitta. Breathing in, I make my mind happy. Breathing out, I make my mind happy. Sometimes the nimitta, the sign, can be too dull or even unstable. You may see lights flickering or flickering in and out. Your consciousness may appear too dull, in which case you need to shine the nimitta. You literally give joy to the mind. Breathing in, I make my mind joyful. Breathing in, I make my mind happy. Breathing out, I make my mind joyful. Breathing out, I make my mind happy. The more joy in your mind, the more brilliant the nimitta shines. And to enter the jhana, the nimitta needs to be the most brilliant that you've ever seen. In step 11, to sustain the nimitta so that it sits there bright, the brightest it could ever possibly be. Breathing in, I concentrate my mind, and breathing out, I concentrate my mind. When a nimitta arises, but still appears dull, sometimes we can focus on the center of the nimitta. So if you focus deeply on the center is brighter, you will find, than the outside peripheral regions of what you see in your mind. If you look subtly at the center, you'll find that the brightness expands. If you look right or feel right at the center of that emotion or the center of that feeling, you'll see that it gets brighter, deeper, more intense. Focus on it so that it comes brighter and then brighter still. By going right to the center and then the center of the center and then the center of the center within that, this dull nimitta will soon become incredibly bright and often continues exploding in all its intensity and luminosity and presence all the way through into the jhana itself. Sharpen your attention in this present moment. Sharpen it, deepen it. Deepen this present moment awareness that was back in the preliminary part of this practice. Deepen it so that your attention now goes right through. Gently remind to focus on the present moment and brighten the mindfulness and shine that nimitta and let go of the stillness. Smile at the nimitta. Keep remembering that the nimitta, the sign, is a reflection of your own mind. And if you smile at the nimitta will smile back. If you smile at your mind, the mind will smile back. Simply deepen your concentration and your happiness. Simply deepen your concentration and your happiness. And if you find that the nimitta is still not bright and beautiful enough, then go back simply to the beautiful breath and bring your attention back to the beautiful breath for one more moment. Again, bring your attention back to the nimitta. Bring your attention back to what you see in front of you. And again, if it is bright, go into the center of the center of the center of the nimitta, allowing you to carry yourself all the way through to the jhana. And if it is not bright, then bring yourself back to the beautiful breath. Be aware of the subtle nature of the beautiful breath and the deep, beautiful presence of the breath. Sometimes you'll find the nimitta appears in front of you for a short time and then disappears, or maybe moves around in your field of vision. Maybe the feeling, the intense feeling, arises and then dissipates. Simply shining the nimitta itself, smiling at it, can be enough to sustain it. Simply going into the center of the center of the center can be enough to sustain the nimitta. Or you may need to go back one last time to the beautiful breath, the subtle, beautiful breath, and then return again to the nimitta. Gently. Relax. The more and more relaxed you are, the more you will be able to free your mind. As soon as you learn to stop gripping or grasping for the nimitta, you will discover the more it is easier to sustain it. The less that you grasp, the less you try to control it, the easier it is to sustain. It can be the most radiant color you've ever seen, which is a wonderful sign. It could be the deepest, most beautiful color you've ever known. This is also a useful sign. Stable, motionless, light or sound or feeling. Stable and motionless. Then you're on the edge of the world of yanas and you're about to enter it. Be stable, be motionless, be still now. Go to the center of the center of the center of the sign of the mind that is right in front of you, and be still. The 12th step. The 12th step is to free the mind completely. Breathing in, I liberate my mind. And breathing out, I liberate my mind. Either you will find yourself sinking into the nimitta itself, or you will feel yourself embraced by it, enveloping you. You don't do this, you just let this happen. It is a natural result of letting go of all you are doing, all the way through the Anapanasati Sutra. It is a constant process of letting go of what has come before. You enter the yana through liberating your mind. The yanas are stages of freedom. The mind is free. The mind is free from body, from the senses. Simply, you're unable to hear or say anything, yet you're fully mindful and as stable as a rock. That deep inner stability, that deep immutable stability is the sign of a yana. And yanas last a long time, not just a few minutes. Many yanas last for hours or days. Once you're inside, there's no choice. There is no will. There is no choice to come out. You only emerge when the mind is ready. A yana is such a still and deeply satisfying state of consciousness and awareness that its very nature is to persist for a long, long time. This heightened state of awareness, this heightened state of consciousness carries you deep, deep within. So you know for yourself when you are in the yana state. You know for yourself when you're in this deep and powerful state, this profound experience. something that surpasses all ordinary experience. The jhana is so similar to enlightenment that the Buddha called this the bliss of enlightenment, Sambodhisukha. So you develop these stages over and over again through your practice, these first 12 steps, and they will lead you into jhana. Be still and go deep. Be still and let go. Be still and go beyond. The last 4 steps of the Anapanasati Sutra relate to coming out of the jhana. When you come from an experience of jhana, you think, reflect deeply on the profound nature of your experience. So the first thing you would do is to review the jhana, and you can do that now. Simply investigate your experience. You might struggle to give it words. Ask yourself, how did this arise? What was my state of consciousness? What special cue did I use? Or what did it feel like? How do I feel now? Why is it so blissful? Such reflections will give rise to deep, deep insight. As I spoke about at the beginning, the best description of jhana is letting go. The best description of why it happens is letting go. You let go of all that you've known. The jhana is beyond everything that you've known up to that point. That's why it's very difficult to describe what happens in a jhana, because you've really let go for the very first time. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the whole of the Anapanasati Sutra is about letting go again and again. It's not about letting go of things that you're holding on to, but it's about letting go of the doer, the you, the one that is doing the attaching. You're letting go of the self, and it's such a difficult thing. Letting go of the self and asking the self to let go of the self seems so difficult, but through these methods and stages, you've done it. And it's real bliss. When you're in that state of letting go, when you emerge, you're so free. There is a freedom within your being. There is a freedom in the presence of letting go. So the 13th step is impermanence. Breathing in, I observe the impermanent nature of all Dharma. And breathing out, I observe the impermanent nature of all Dharma. This 13th step, anicca, is usually translated as impermanence. We reflect on these deep stages of meditation, and we reflect because this thing called a self disappeared. That self is no longer in existence, it's vanished. When you notice that, you start to become deeply, deeply aware of impermanence and of no self, or anatta, anicca and anatta, impermanence and no self. Just these insights alone can put you on a direct path to enlightenment and awakening. Because you realize the true nature of being. You realize that the true nature of peace and going beyond all that you've struggled with comes from an insight into impermanence and no self. The 14th step, fading away. Breathing in, I observe the disappearance of all desire. In breathing out, I observe the disappearance of all desire. The fading away of all things, or viraga, is when things just disappear. You've seen many things disappear in your life, and now you've watched the process of the 16 stages as things disappear as you enter jhana. Some of these were so close to you, like the self, that you've assumed they were you. You've assumed they were essential, but they're not. They're all gone, they've vanished. So you've experienced this fading away of yourself. In step 15, cessation. Breathing in, I experience cessation. Breathing out, I experience cessation, or nirodha. Nirodha is what was once there has now completely disappeared. It's actually ended and gone completely. And in its place, there is now emptiness. That is why the realization of emptiness is such a profound realization on the path. Such emptiness can only be known in the very deepest of meditations. So much of what you thought was essential has ceased. The self has vanished. The self has ceased, and you're in a completely different space. Still silent, spacious awareness. No self. Cessation of everything, a vanishing, a disappearing, a fading away, impermanence. And then finally, the 16th step is what I mentioned at the beginning, letting go. Breathing in, I observe letting go, and breathing out, I observe letting go. Letting go or abandoning, letting go. The most wonderful experience. Letting go or abandoning. We're not letting go of what's out there and around us. We're letting go of what's in here. And we're letting go of everything that we knew. We're letting go of the doer. And then we're even letting go of the knower, the witnesser. The witness has disappeared, and so has the doer. When you look carefully, you can see that this is so instrumental to guiding you in your everyday life. To be able to let go. To be able to let go of the internal world guides us in our experience in the outer world, to let go of everything that is out there that we perceive through our senses. Because as you know, two people can perceive the world in entirely different ways. One can perceive it happily, and one can perceive it in sadness. So we know that perception is governing our external experience. And when you learn to let go of that experiencer, you learn to be free. You're no longer tied to the experiences of the senses. You're no longer tied to perception. This insight gives rise to so much happiness, so much purity, and so much profound awareness, so much freedom, and so much bliss. You've found the path to end all suffering. So this beautiful practice that you've just tried once and will try many times over your lifetime, Buddha described as anapanasati. And it began with that simple practice of finding a quiet place and sitting down in a comfortable seat. A very simple practice indeed, being mindful and simply just watching what is going on in front of you, and then watching the breath. When you bring mindfulness step by step into your practice and follow these 16 steps, you will reach these profound and blissful states we call jhana. And when you emerge from them, you have these 4 things to contemplate. You have the impermanence or the uncertainty of things to understand and realize. You have the fading away of things, the cessation of self, and the letting go of all that is in here, all that you've held on to, all your ideas and concepts. And when you do that, something is going to happen. When you truly let go in such an enormous and a profound way, then something is going to happen. Something deep and profound. A very powerful realization. A very powerful realization into bliss and then beyond. Slowly now, become aware of the space within you. Space within you and all around you. Become aware of the space within you and all around you, and slowly open your eyes a crack at a time, as if you're greeting the dawn for the first time. Greeting it from the sun of deep realization within you, from a pure heart and a pure mind and pure awareness. Simple, pure, deep, open awareness and spaciousness. Gently open your eyes. Let your eyes be fully open, crack at a time. Become aware of the space within you and all around you with your eyes open. Become aware of the compassionate, non-dual awareness that now fills your being. Become aware that you perceive and see and experience what is within you and all around you in a different way. And that realization, even if it is just subtly different from the space with which you entered into the meditation, that realization is a very profound realization indeed. So I thank you all for your practice. I thank you all for your deep and powerful and profound presence, and for the Buddha within all of you. If you want to share, or if you'd like to answer some questions, I think we have just a few more minutes, and I'm very grateful indeed. So deepest gratitude for the beautiful presence that you all bring here.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So much deepness in your teachings. It's amazing. I think that it was a little bit complicated for me this session. I mean, it's a practice for life, but when you had to feel all the joy and all the bliss, I felt that I needed more to ignite the process. Like I couldn't feel that much bliss and joy as you were telling us to breathe in and breathe out.
Ibby, thank you. You've brought up a very powerful point. I'm obviously doing this with you in a process of about an hour, but realistically speaking, on the part that you're talking about, and that is bringing that mindful power to joy and bliss, you could spend the entire hour on just that part. And I think the realization that you have, you might realize from this practice, that's where I need to bring my concentration. That's where I need to bring my attention. That's where I need to absorb the most. If you realize that, that is such a powerful and profound realization, because you'll find then the next practice you go, you might think about that all during the day and contemplate it. So that's the power of the 4 steps at the end, is that you start to develop the insight, which is really crucial to you deepening the process. So your insight might be, oh, I'm going to spend this whole day cultivating joy and happiness, because then when you enter into your meditation next time, you'll enter from that point and you will be right there, and you'll think, oh, I can spend the first half an hour or whatever, an hour, I can spend that on that process of deep absorption and the joy and the happiness before I do anything else. And it's a really profound and deep understanding of where you are in the process. So thank you. I'm deeply grateful for that comment.
No, thank you.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Time disappeared, and when I looked up and it's like, oh, it's been an hour. That's incredible.
Mm.
That was very deep.
Thank you, Stephen. It was very deep. It was very, very
I'm a little speechless. I'm not sure.
Good. That's a good way to be. And thank you, Naresh, too. I can hear your voice in the background as well.
Yeah.
And thank you, Sime. I know I can see your hearts and hands, so thank you too.
My friends, I have to go, but thank you very much. Stephen, you are going to post this somewhere?
Yes, Hollywood.
I will post it. Yep, I will post it on my YouTube, and I will probably also make an audio file of just the meditation as well and post that.
Sorry for leaving you, but I have to go. Stephen, thank you. Holly, you are amazing. You didn't hear me at the beginning. I don't know where do you have so much time to hear all the podcasts in the internet and everything. I mean, your days are 48 hours. Amazing.
Well, if the things I share are helping others, then I'm very humble and grateful that it might help somebody else. So
they do. Bye bye, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you too, Holly. That sounds a good point. Actually, it seems like from your speechlessness to Naresh and Sime to Ebby, that sounds a lovely point to end. Actually, so
okay. Well, I can't thank you enough for leading us in this incredibly beautiful and very profound lifetime practice.
Well, thank you. I can only thank the teachers I've had. I mean, it's really all their words, all their insights, all their guidance. That's really, the guidance there is from teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh and Jack Kornfield and Ajahn Brahm. I mean, that's the kind of guidance they've given me. So I'm passing on to you their words, and their words are from the Buddha himself. So I can take no credit whatsoever. It's totally, I'm just a very tiny vessel on a very large ocean, and they've provided the the landing areas that I can find some foundation with, and that's all I'm truly passing on. So I'm very grateful to you indeed.
Well, it's a tremendous gift that you're passing along. So thank you very much. All right, I'm going to end the recording here.